Hi guys, my name is Trinity, and if you are here, you must be here to talk about books. Today, I will be reviewing She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. So in this book, we do have a reimagining of the rise of the Ming Dynasty. And to start off the book, we start with a brother and a sister who are given a fortune, per se, a destiny. And one of them is destined for greatness and the other nothingness. And when raiders come to their hometown and the girl's brother dies, she decides to take on his life and ends up at a monastery with an emblem that was given to her brother, not to her. And things progress from there. Now, this book has been touted as the Song of Achilles meets Mulan. A lot of people agree with this. I, however, have not read the Song of Achilles yet, so I can't vouch to that. And basically, Zhu's mantra through this whole book is, I refuse to be nothing. She is not satisfied with the prophecy she has been given and does everything in her power to make sure that that is not her fate and that she is going to live out the destiny of greatness and not nothingness. Add to that, we have quite a bit of LGBTQ plus representation in the fact that the two perspectives that we follow fall into this category. We have one who is a eunuch and one who is a girl pretending to be a boy. That's where the Mulan aspect comes into play. But as the story progresses, that becomes her identity. Even though the book still says she and her, their identity definitely starts to fall into the they-them category, and where they live their life as a male, but they also are starting to accept their body as female. And so it's very interesting watching all of that play out. So let's go ahead and get into the review. I gave this book 3 stars. And I want to give some explanations as to why, because a lot of people are giving this book 5 stars. And okay, sure. But I gave this book 3 stars, and I just want to give some explanation as to why I landed at 3 stars with She Who Became the Sun. So the first thing that I want to mention is that the first chapter starts off very, very purpley. Very purple prose. We have a lot of metaphors all over the place. Descriptions that don't exactly make sense or fit what Shelley Parker Chan seems to be trying to do. And I hated it. I hated the first chapter. I almost DNF'd it, but then I was like, oh, okay, just keep going a little bit. Usually give a book about 50 pages before I stop. And so I kept going. I'm kind of glad that I did, because that aspect of it does let up fairly quickly. And so if you get through the first chapter, or you start reading and you're like, oh no, this is purple, this is not flowery, this is purple, then you might be happy to find that the whole book does not read that way. It does seem to me that she was trying to set a scene, and the way she went about it, the execution of it just didn't work for me at all. Point blank at all. Another thing that I really didn't like is you don't get to know Chu very well, because there are so many time jumps. The things that are interesting about this story are off page, and the time jumps don't allow you to get to know Chu very well at all. Like, at all. And so I found myself really not caring at all what happened to Chu or what happened to all the people around them, because I didn't care. And then the other perspective that we're given in this book is the enemy, the enemy general of the other nation. And I didn't care about them either because there were some heartfelt moments, and I'll get to that. But I couldn't care for these characters. I had no connection to them whatsoever, and that remained through the entire book. The whole thing. I'm not a character-driven reader, so usually I can get past that if the rest of the book is fantastic. But this book didn't quite make fantastic. It didn't quite hit that level that I need to, bypass some poor character work. And it seemed like anytime we were given an intimate moment with Chu, that we fast forwarded. So it didn't even matter that we had that intimate moment. We didn't get to see the development of her character after the fact or what led up to that. So nothing in this world was really making sense. Another thing that drove me just absolutely insane about this book was all of the action happens off page. And it doesn't matter what the action is. It's not written into the story. So we're in the middle of a war. None of that is present in the story. Not a single action scene is in this book. And taking away the action, taking away the real deep development of the character, you've lost me. Now let's talk about the things that this book did right, because I do think that there are some redeeming qualities about this book, even though the two biggest things for me have been eliminated. Well, we'll get to plot as well. Or maybe I should talk about that first before I get into what I did like. So as far as plot goes, there's not a cohesive plot in this. It's pretty messy. And part of that is due to the fact that we time jump quite often. So there is plot, but it's based on the events that are occurring. It has little to nothing to do with the characters themselves, and it has no bearing on the characters' motivations. So if you are looking for a plot-driven book, this isn't a plot-driven book either. It's neither plot-driven nor character-driven. And so I can't exactly explain to you what drives this book other than what I'm about to say. And that would be the things I liked about it. This book, rather than being a fantasy novel, seemed to have quite the agenda. And that being non-binary representation. And those aspects of this novel were done so well. And I know Shelley Parker Chan is also non-binary, so this is a owned voice telling of this story. And I think that is the only thing that kept me going in this novel, is I really, really liked the non-binary representation and the exploration of sexuality, being asexual, aromantic, bisexual, lesbian, like all of those things were explored really, really well. And that is the only thing that kept me going. The relationships in the book and the representation and how it was presented and executed. I really, really enjoyed all of that. And I think that I'm happy to have read this book solely based on that. Do I think it's a great fantasy novel? Absolutely not. Do I think it's a great historical fiction? No, not at all. The historical content's not even there. But I do think that the agenda that Shelley Parker Chan had came across very well. And I do think it is a great book for the relationships that are established in the book and for the representation and the explorations of gender identity and sexuality within the novel. This does mean that I am not going to continue with this series though, because I wanted a fantasy book. This just isn't it. It was a way to get the queer agenda that she wanted out there, and she wrapped it in a pretty package. So I did like the aspects of that though a lot, and that is my review of She Who Became the Sun. I wish I liked it more, but I do wish that there were more fantasy elements. I wish there was some action. I wish we could have gotten to know the characters a little bit better. But for what it is, I do think it was okay. It was fairly good. I didn't love it. I'm not going to be recommending it to everybody, but I do think it's worth the read. And just like with my blog, I do like to give recommendations for books that you should read if you liked this book. Now, the two that I'm going to mention first, I read one of them, DNF'd it, and I haven't read the other, but it's on my TBR. However, Twitter has come to refer to She Who Became the Sun and these other two books as the Sapphic Trifecta. And so, based on what everybody on Twitter has said, if you like one of them, you'll probably like the other two. And that would be The Unbroken and The Jasmine Throne. Now, The Jasmine Throne is the one that I DNF'd, but as you guys have come to realize, I have ADHD, and when a book is too slow, my brain won't process it, and that is the issue I had with The Jasmine Throne. I was very, very, very into the story, but I was very, very into the writing, I should say. But other than that, I just didn't quite vibe with it. And then a personal recommendation. I would recommend Hall of Smoke by H.M. Long. This might seem a little strange, but let me explain just a little bit. This book is written kind of in a historical fantasy way. And H.M. Long's Hall of Smoke is actually kind of written in the same way, except it's real, legit fantasy. It's not historical fantasy. And it plays into the beliefs of the Norse religion. However, you're dealing with the issues in the main character's mind, and not so much with the issues of the world around them. And I think that if you liked She Who Became the Sun, you would probably like Hall of Smoke for that reason. But also similar writing styles. I feel like Shelley Parker Chan and H.M. Long kind of have a similar vibe to the book. And I know one is Asian historical fiction and the other is Norse type fantasy, but I do think that the two play off of each other pretty well.